Hi, Claire. Claire. Hi, Andrew.
Anthony, is it Anthony or is it something like Anthony?
It's nobody going nowhere. I think they're just Chinese.
So we'll begin with the Heart Sutra.
Good morning, good morning. I mean, good afternoon. Good evening.
On page
He usually does, in the early morning, he comes here before sun. The monks do.
Thus I have heard, at one time the Blessed One was dwelling on the royal domain of Ocean Mountain, the great gathering of ones and the great assembly of the disciples. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in samadhi and many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, the Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the five skandhas in their natural forms. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should the son of a lineage train wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is full. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness. And having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomenon. There is no quality of sight and so on, no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so on, no old age and death, and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no end. No wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, Bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no aspirations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell on the three times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom, and they become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teyata, Om Gate Gate, Paragate, Parasangate, Bodhi Swaha. Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from his samadhi and said to the Bodhisattva Mahasatha, noble Avalokiteshvara, that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One has said this, the Venerable Sharadvati Putra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasatha, and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and gandharvas, rejoice and praise the words of the Blessed One. Continue with the Shraddha offering on page 16. Saji
나 소마테 소도 라터지 그래야 아니 고른도 그런 거지 나무에 사람 다는데 슈마타 와서기나 즈이자 투바 자와서 너무래야 즈바나데 머치오레 스무도와 제가 즈바나데 머치오레 드네디르 투바 자와레 고르지 스무도와 다들 소마야 근제데 카레서 와이나테니 디바나 얼마 스무도 디바지 예수 소준제도 니자 수녀 소준제도 레오 고바게 레오 제네 레오 고바 노제베 레오 카라시도와 때는 준제 카르 군도서 와이나 테라 토마 리치 자바자오 서도 테라 토마 리치 자바자오 너저반에 조반에 수면이 배서 아니 담보 저것도 공부해서 아니 저번에 저 맞죠 너저반에 요이나 아니 소소를 조반을 받는 용비 그래야 테라 돈을 제도 말해서 조반에 수면이 빠져서 아니 저세 못네 잘 오래서 제가 모두 저번에 다 추나 나도 좀 지구에 말이잖아 추로는 뭐 송거를 난 추로를 마대비 소소 니자 추지가 토이가 나리네요 저번에 기침도 하면서 저도 나만 되는 얘가 제일 그래야 제 편서 계좌에 나타나는 것도 나와게 소수 예도 뭐 뭐지 당 체육도 상보 근데 소리야 저번에 돈에 맞잖아 그게 이제 되는 거죠 근데 라면체 근데 차도 연구를 와디도 저바시아데 주요도니 지어있나요? 기초부터 차원이라 소소기 문제가 소유를 줄이네요. 저바스인데 기초부터 소소문상 정상은 지나이네요. 저바도는 바다지도 있나? 제자의 편서 바기 대지를 파마도 부주 바기 대지를 그나지 소소 지 라칭다 인칭 바기 그래서 대지를 몸보이는 거 투부 사용으로 하는 상황 투부 주는 지고요. 저대도 내가들 투바 맞이를 말해 하는 저것도 거래. 저것도 보마이나 하는 투바 지역에서 걸리시 잡고래. 걸리시 지역을 그런데 가는데 돈에 제토가지고 거래서 그래서 토마리 저거 공부해야 돼. 투바 집에 그래야 강연 몸보이는 돈에 지고 상보 안에 먼저 밤에나 안에 TV 강연 놀이지만 더 잘하고래 TV 투바집에 그냥 강연 놀이지만 또 그냥 말해서 그렇게 도 그런가
So let's read from verse 20 and read verse 20 and 21. Here it says, endure patiently. We discussed a little bit on that during our last last discussions. It says, during patiently, seek learning, and during the forest, make an effort to stabilize attention, meditate on this and so on. In that verse, what it says, you should know that the positions are purified by making right livelihood pure. The purification of goodness, happens to motivations whose nature is emptiness and compassion. Those are the two verses we will be discussing today. But the first verse, which is the verse 20, that we discussed a little bit on that during our last session. Let's summarize once again here. So in this verse, actually, it talks about the actual order of our practice. the verse 20 talks about the actual order of our practice. So regardless of what kind of practice we may undertake, one's practice must start from practice of patience, without which the foundation of patience will not be there. The foundation of the practice will be not there. It is therefore, according to the commentary itself, says, patience must be practiced right from the beginning. Once the patience is practiced, on the basis of practice and patience, one then search for the sick to learn or listen to the teachings. Thabot said, having practiced patience, one then seek to listen to the teachings. Without having a practice of patience, not even thinking of, not even having a regard of those practice of patience, and let alone incorporating this practice of patience and try to listen to the teaching will not be fruitful. Therefore, practice patience. On the basis of patience, when you listen to the teachings will become fruitful. That's what it means. So therefore, first one should begin one's practice is patience. Because without having practice of patience, even a little confrontation, a very minor event or the incidents will make us uncomfortable, agitated, annoyed, which become a big obstacle for one's practice. So therefore, practice of patience is suggested right from the beginning. If one has a practice of patience, even though when we come across with the adverse circumstances, one's mind will be very stable, calm. One will not become agitated and not become annoyed, in which case you are actually freeing yourself from the obstacles of the hindrance of one's practice of Dharma. So practice of patience and having patience not only suggested in Dharma practitioner or someone who believes in certain, religion and so on. It's not a religion. It's not a matter of religious practice. It is a fact that it's required for all of us in our day-to-day life. Even in our day-to-day life, if someone who is impatient, who is so sensitive, who becomes so annoyed and offended by really this person will become very unhappy and will not become cannot be acquainted with individual people who are in your surrounding. So therefore, it is practice of patience is a benefit. It's a great benefit for practitioner as well as non-practitioners or the non-believers. So it's very important. Because of lack of patience, the first was lacking the practice of patience will create a very unsuitable situation for oneself. And then give rise to the uncomfortable situation for other beings in your surrounding. It is actually harming yourself in the beginning, harming yourself directly and harming others indirectly. So therefore, why should we adopt something that is harmful for oneself and that of other beings? So therefore, practicing patience is very, 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 very important. So with the practice of patience, one will be able to go along with one's family, with community, and the people in your surrounding, and so forth. So, therefore, it says, prior to seeking teachings from the teachers, listening to the teachings, practicing patience is very, very important. So, because when we are receiving teachings, when one is listening to the teachings of the Dharma, one should withstand. There's many situations where one should handle all those many hardships, physically and mentally. Without having the practice of patience, one will not be able to handle those situations. So therefore, practice of patience is suggested right from the beginning of one's practice of Dharma.
다지도 저거부터 가지고서 내가 손 나서 이와 손진이 로스 쇼스 몇 개지 제가 단도 뒤로 지나 잡았어야 돼 두 번째 오늘 상보로 다 강에 담는 요래 lumbakai jinan tuba jala tene sadari mojuni pe blogu yatina rojo cheta blogu yatina yongore tena ge akange tene kaji tuji jobo tene ya saya to yatina ge sadari mojane tene ge saya to yakange ane lune ne nasa tang saru ge dungi no so tena moji cheta sene rojo cheta blogu yatina pe lumbai tene yore 누가 이내 너무 대단한 지나 사와들이 지나는 장소 소소 대산이 다른 돌 만들어지는 소소 강의 여기 도지는 다음으로 진행해서 도서배 그다음에 이제 가르치는 거 강의 주요 되잖아 된다고 강의에서 소소 책을 쓰네 누가 제사래 내 토요에 가르나 대 강의에 소소 저도 참여로 와 저한테요 저봤어야 돼 대양 준세 도미토니 우리가 지역에 그래서 레전드 기침고 주제에 가지고 통나 한때 무역 체도 로고토 와이네 칼라마는 데레가 됐다가 제 모습까지 내가 메디니 제대하게 되는 모두 와서 소소하게 두 번째한테 준세 야도 가지고 통토와이나 한때 두 번째 그래야 강의 가는 중 중앙에 데레야 우리도 가지고 거로
So, in the past, in Tibet, when one is willing to practice Dharma, one needs to seek teacher. But to seek teacher is not nearby. Unlike the situation the condition that we have, the resources that we have right here at this time, they need to travel on foot for long distance, days, even months, and where they have come across a lot of difficulties, physical hardships, and lack of daily foods and so on. So all this are suggested. The practice of patience is suggested for this purpose right from the beginning. If one has the practice of patience and one can withstand with all those hardships, one can be able to willingly or without any hesitation, one will be able to accept those hardships. So therefore, now for us, sometimes we as a human beings, ordinary human beings, our body is composed of contaminated substances, and it is bound to undergo suffering of sickness, aging, and so forth. If you have our practice of patience, one will be able to handle all this without any problems. And such as even the weather, cold, heat, and so forth. For instance, here we have a few people here listening to the teachings. You are now living here in this center. We're all you all make an effort to come to this center to listen to the teachings, which requires a patience, isn't it? Without having a patience, you will not be able to be here. So having made this, journey coming from one's own home to here, right from the beginning of one's making of journey, when you come out of one's home or place where you are staying, motivation should be there of listening to the teachings. I must actually at least make some kind of change in my mind, such as practice of patience, make it more firm, stable. So therefore, if one is able to do that, and one's practice of patience will be based on reasonings. It is not just randomly saying that you have to practice patience, you will have benefit out of it, but you have to see, you have to know the reasonings, why the reasoning behind the practice of patience.
자, 투바세야 돼. 개척을 투바세야 돼. 저 투바세야 돼. 시행이 시행을 여러 개 안주고 투바져야 투바스가 당소 로종가나 강아지와 있는 소소 그게 되지 되네. 아니 그게 되고 소소 강시바도 강난 유여바데 안으로만서만 도와서 되시 지마 시행으로와 대시에바도 소소 안주고 투고로와 소소 안주 강투바데 소소 해야 되는 나니 인데야 소소 존나들의 제바 지는 들야다 다시는 지는 되네. 강이바다 강마이바 소소 갱이 시에바도 투가 상나 전혀 맞아봐 랑기 아니 제도 시라기 아니 레니하고지 제고 여러 제가 내내도 저당 투바세는 안주 투바지래 저당 당도 강나 강자와이나 맞춰봐지 무슨 계시는 거와 당보들이 그 때문에 나와도 뭐지 tweet 아니 비해서 치에서 봐서 장르지 제네르베 저만으로 지야주면 뭐로 저한테는 우리가 투바자서 뭐 투바자가 놓았어야 돼. 투바자들 투바가 자원서 다도 그게 놓이 때네 되게 투바 소소라와 제고 저한테는 투바자와자 투바자들 매나 아니 나 유튜브 손소가 나시래 투바 미베 공부하대 라돈 잘한 사람다 사는 배드는 거도 되고 투바 미베 공부하셔야 된다 무슨 나중에 공부하지 엔딩상 나이다 다서 주고 열어봐 다 공부하지다 공부해야 돼 저당이 미저래 공부 나서라 단다면 뭐 쉬어래 공부는 야고이 미바스 캐리어 말해 공부는 도 이미 미바 캐리어 공부나다 나다마다 열래 소소 가는 원에 되고 제상 소소 투바야 보지 매발라 아니 지금 공부이나 아니 배나 라발 라동지 근데 다가는 다다 지발해서 걸어 라발라동 지 다른 다와는 나도 이렇게 요마라고 말이지나 어디나시 투바면이 공자와이나 아니 소소 운전이야 방도고 유ten가 계지 제도 말해서 그러다 뒤에 제도 나지만 개 변도요 말해서 어디네 투바를 기침 거래서 대단한 맛이 투바다 만들면 상대지 다다 니만 넘버를 좀 타자 미인데 상담 투바면 안 소소 운전이야 나 용라가 좀 시어이나 근데 신내다 하동서야 그러데 근데 요아요 말해서 신내다 하동도 그러데 근데 투바를 때는 용거래서 저는 투바면은 신내다 하도 신내면은 하동들에 가요 저는 하동 용하는 신내 때는 용거죠 상고 어디서 용거 말인데 그러면은 아니 라도면은 소소 주고 용거다 봐도 그 말에 저는 유모 방비 라도 용하나 신내게 땡기 거라마다 신내면은 라도 용도 말 저는 용하나 아니 뒤와야 받지 그래서 다 이제 도서 용도가 이렇게 신고해도 되지
So again, endure, patience, seeking learning. Endure, patience, and seeking learning. In the, as with the root text, where it says, verse 20, right in the beginning of the verse, the first line of the verse, where it says, on the basis of practice and patience, then one should seek learning, which means seek teacher who actually can teach us the Dharma. By listening to the teacher, not just by listening, but also whatever the teacher that is teachings that has been given by the teacher, one must retain that. One must keep that in one's mind and pay close attention without wandering. Because if one is not being able to pay a close attention, and one will not be able to keep all those teachings given by the teacher in one's mind, without which then one's participation in the teachings will become purposeless. Pay attention, listen carefully. Then once you have listened to the teachings, one must analyze whatever the teaching that gets given by the teacher. One should analyze, not just by what this is said by the teacher, but one should have a liberty to analyze the teachings. So therefore, without, again here, listening to the teachings, there's no basis to analyze. First listen to the teachings, try to get the meaning of the teachings, pay close attention, not half-heartedly, but try your best to get all those teachings given by the teacher, and then analyze. So this is the sequence of how we actually step oneself into the teachings of the Dharma. Because listening is something that is very, very important for the practitioner to practice. In other words, listening is very important for one's practice of meditations. Without listening to the teachings and try to meditate and try to maintain a deep meditation, is analogous to someone without a limb is trying to climb a rocky mountain. So therefore, first listen to the teaching, and whatever the meaning that you have comprehended, the teachings given by the teacher, one should then meditate on it and practice, without which the practice is not there at all. So therefore, then it further says, without having a listening to the teacher, having understood the teachings very carefully, the in-depth meaning of the teachings, then practice of meditative concentrations and shamatha, or the calm abiding, will not be achieved. Without achievement of calm abiding, the special insight is not possible. Without special insight, then one's practice of Dharma will not become an antidote towards one's mental reflections. In order to perfect one's shamatha, single-pointed concentrations, and special insight, or the vipassana, one should first listen to the teachings and keep all those teachings that are given by the teacher, maintaining it and practicing it, without which one will not be able to become, one's practice will not be able to become antidote or remedy for one's mental reflections, without which, then one's practice of Dharma will not actually become a practice of Dharma. Because the practice of Dharma is something that can change our way of thinking. To change our way of thinking can happen only application of antidotes.
당어도 뒤버리니 강 뒤버리지 된다는 거지. 소소리 시베 있나요? 시베는 중앙 있나요? 준도 소소리 눌러야 나가 쉬고 요구만 와. 제가 말한서 제위 담을 체체 임바데 뭐 참이 쉬고 있나요? 저걸 한번 보면 많이 발소도 눌러래. 나가지마다 체를 해서 하들러래 나가 쉬고 요구만 와. 제가 체 임바데 뭐 쉬고 요래. 다제 두가지래 돼. 소소러래 나가 쉬고 요구만 가려나? 엔터리에 공리 주시면 마대 병원에 용도고 요만 제가 도움을 받다 받으려야 왜냐 단지 다반지는 단지의 공리 망보 된서 인상 대용 대기벽에 진년이 아니 라님 못하바 이마다 이번 처가 이마다 솔롱을이야 야야 용도가 돼 마단지라 공리 주시면 왕게 되게 되는 용도도 도스 자 다들 이제 주버리지니 대단하다고 기 방자고 쳐나 방자고 쳐도 소리 강이 뭐야 뭐지 시바 있나요? 소소 롱을이야 영어리야 가디는 야야야야 그도 세명이 용하지 소고 근데 용하나 공전이 세지도 냠바샤니 온리 때니 용고야지 마도 지대로 지 군이 매매도 용하지 많이 봐요. 근데 tendergi nyamba shane bonja wala ane ne ba tengo yi so sa teni nas ne ba jas te sumata sa teni ba teni nas ne ba jas nas ya de tam so shingdong shingmong bo yi sa ge ni tendergi mong bo yi so tsaya na tsa sa do je nas ne ba ja da na na ya chabo de ge me je dang ge ni ane na to ko de sa ya 이외에는 노래 좀봐 차야는 거다. 너무 뭐냐 그 버리. 다 너무 보이서야 진짜 지우는 거다. 아니 제대로 오다 나더라. 소원해 버리면도 메이저도 내가 그래. 내가 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 간도에는 소소 나이 제사게. 같이 나이 기다 가서 자제는 놓아요. 가와다는 지 신나노다. 자주는 것도 저게 되는데 신앙하는 신앙기 제사고 유노보다 뇌사 제사고 유노보다 다만다 더 노여와 자네도 대단하게 엠바지를 받대네 대원이나 은소소 공원제를 거래야 하는 공 내가 도와주요 시와요서 하는 엠바딩을 해야 되다 가서 tenanas never charge that language.
So just mere listening to the teachings and understanding the meaning of the teachings, to be able to comprehend the meaning of the teachings alone is again not sufficient. Because one need to continuously, in a very consistent manner, practice and meditate. Because even though that you know the meaning, you understand the meaning, if one is unable to maintain consistency of one's practice, then this is not going to help. Just like our experience, but just like as we know that we all are, later or sooner, we all will leave this world. And, in other words, we will pass away from this life. We all know that. We all know that. We are certain about that. But we cannot have this, we cannot remember this in our day-to-day life. Right? Think about it. Right from the beginning, as soon as one open one's eye, and beginning one's day, we're not having this. We're unable to remember that impermanent nature of one's life. It is due to the lack of our familiarization with our practice of impermanence. Rather, our mind is completely influenced or preoccupied by the view of eternalism. We'll never accept ourselves. And we never think of that. I may die tomorrow. My life may be done by after a couple of minutes and so on and so forth. We are planning to live forever. The way we do, our way of doing things is that we are planning to live for forever. That is because of our past habituation of this view of eternalism. So therefore, in order to have this, one should listen to the teachings time and again. And having listened to the teachings, one should meditate on a consistent level, in a consistent manner, which will then become one's remembering of impermanence, very natural and effortless. And that effortless thought will take place in one's mind at any time. So therefore, it says one should, this will then be able to take oneself to the further meditation on what we call the single-pointed concentrations. In order to develop this single-pointed concentrations, where it says, then dwell in the forest, what it says. The line says, the verse 20, the second line, which it says, then dwell in the forest. And the first line, it says, endure patiently, seek learning, then dwell in the forest. So what is meant by dwell in the forest is to adopt a solitude retreat in a way you are free from mundane activities, where you're free from, noises and, disturbance and so forth. That is what is meant by dwell in the forest. That is not necessarily being in a very thick jungle, but it is just free from mundane activities. So, because if one is able to find such a place, and this place, the congenial place, then one's cause of mental wandering will be less. There will not, because most of the time our meditation, our practice is not becoming very fruitful and very authentic. It's because our mind is always wandering. The wandering thought is the one that really becomes the obstacle, the impediment for one's own practice of meditations. So therefore, this will lessen our mental wanderings, because there will be less object to whom you generate hatred. There will be less object to whom that you generate attachment, so on. It is therefore the suggestion of dwelling in the forest is something that you actually living in a place where you're actually distancing yourself from the mundane activities. That is what is meant by dwelling in the forest.
문고 여기 기체시 지리야. 소소기 예로 유무소 줘봐. 대강이야. 아니 세주도 샤도가 찍고 그래. 아무도 로지치도 되서 그러면 별로 제도 사실은 로지 비니 야고지 장쇼 다쇼 왔으나지. 세베도 힘만데 지금도 파는 뭐 못해서 보단 뭐야. 치기 때 이거 가도 뭐 시험도 뭐 상만에 대 지수를 예로도 가사가를 줘야 되고 있는 거 로제로 지도 되니 거기 문에 되는 따다지 봐. 슈로 있잖니. 따도 말은 빼놓으면서 매실이로 매실 시고가게 또 니마가 되는데 원래 시로들은 면다요 면바요 용도와 저도 그 매실도 신도 니마다 신의 버릇도 캐니 거야 아마 캐나로 다리는 따다 집에 그래는 막이 거외에 신의 간배 타고지 캐be 그래는 신의 도와주니 면바도 그러면 왜들 하나 찾는 면바도 그러면 저 대인들 냠바샤 세다 소소게 이로 용소도 탐지 소소하게 되게 안소도 뭔가 대관에 찌지도 도가 저도 되는 샤도이나 안에 그 전다데 야고지 네트워크 거로 제가 드라마에 받지는 나이로부터 고바슈 첨부터 이거는 더 시야게 쳐도 아니 냠바샤오래 제가 냠바샤오래 하는 메시지를 해서 도송을 나 냠바샤를 제제 그래서 메시지를 제가 냠바샤를
So then the third language is make an effort to stabilize attention. That suggests, maintain single-pointed meditation. That is what it's meant by in the commentary where it says. So single-pointed meditation is something that you are observing your mind and placing your mind on the object of meditations, object that is chosen for your meditations. And try to, place your mind on that object only. And not letting this mind actually wander, rather putting all this force and its power on the object that is chosen for one's own meditation. That is what is meant by single-pointed meditations. Because if one's mind, although that one may maintain and one may consider oneself as meditating, engaging in single-pointed meditations, if one's mind is some part of your mental factors are running after some kind of some other objects, such as object of attachment, object of aversion, and so on and so forth. One may consider oneself as maintaining single-pointed meditation, but this is not going to be single-pointed meditation because your mind is wandering everywhere. You're unable to, put all your force, all this mental strength on the object of meditations. So therefore, when we talk about single-pointed meditation, if one is able to place your mind on the object, the chosen object, without letting it wander any other objects, running after any other objects, you are said to be being able to maintain your single-pointed meditations. Otherwise, when one part of your mind is putting on the effort of practicing single-pointed meditation and placing on the object that is chosen for your meditation, another part of your mind are wandering somewhere, running after certain object of attachment and aversion and so on, you're very far away from the single-pointed meditation.
tenaji ne batti mi kani na nyamba shabe kani na ta so mo so me ba so ge ji yore te karna ranjo ge ane nyoma de ranjo le be nyoma da denzi se ta so ta na bi shona shi yo de sa bo maran so dole jange kwal ko jonge o tendere da maji ko ji ne kama de nyoma to so ane tada gi jo danze tada reyese var da koy da danze ne na bi shonge o kwal ko jo gi ju so ne de pa serbe be kare karin ne gare na danze te yima ne yungo yore en tege tamu nyoma se ya de yungo da ka da danze ne lore nyoma se ne lore ten lo na da lo ga na ya se da se ju ni che se ju na ne pe rin da ma mo shi ju su mo yore yu la lo jene se ju ma ju ma ji se to su mo yore de pa jene de ma che ya de ne je je ene de ma di pa me ne ma de ga ju yore ka da de 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 se mo mo je de ka da ma lo kone she de da ne lo to lo de 가르쳐 드리는 ranjol yu de bege ane nyamo to de me ba so ya che de ne indu nyamba ye ne bezi che gu ya de nyamo ze tra da ta yu nyamo ta ne yu nyamo ne de ne che go re ta yu nyamo to ne yu nyamo ni sho ta nyamo de la ba de ne che gu na be shon je so na ya ta ne to da ne ne sho de ne che gu ya re 여다산이 온다면서 이제 자세하다. 근데 맞아. 상황이고 그래. 제가 뒤에 모두라서 고마자. 제가 다소서 말아도 뭐하지 차가 있는 거예요. 소소 예동 통화 보여줘. 컴바인을 모타인을 테라스업에 제 소소 예동 통화 못 보여줘. 그 예동 뭐지 통역이 그랬더니 차는 거예요. 제가 뭐도 차와주고 거여서 대도야 쳐도 소도라니 강하라 차가 눈에 대차사가 있더라 눈이 때문에 보고 그래서 모두 봐서 뭐 얘도 뭐 와서 제가 얘도 뭐 통되든지 용도가 되네 소 차바지는 거 야, 대리 차원도 선부 때는 차원이 되기 kartauna ente 모두 보고 그래 어때 모두 보고 근데 제가 차벽이 열었더니 모두 보고 하는데 그런 차벽이 있는 거 전화받지래 제가 때문에 모두 보고 얘도 뭐 따야 돼요 얘도 뭐 따야 돼요 아니 그 준세 예비团 얘도 뭐 따야지 마도 생각을 했다니 얘도 뭐 레스는 편하고 말아 소소기 세네 요 땅을 준세 저 통화이나 걸로 요하셔야 되기 같이 지는 요하는 거래 요 땅 가보게 말해 준세지 마도나를 요 땅 가보 이래래 준세 여기 돈나 계지 더를 요 되는 거다 제가 내는 아무도 없는 거다 만나 차바다 나지게 맞아다 차도 제사들은 뭐 이나지는 뭐 이러 제가 차바 제사도 저랬더니 모두 먹고 와야 콘로도 지나서 봐 지들의 제사래야 아니 미제 뭐야 무슨 뭐야 어디는 나오래서 그들이야 모두라서 뭐가지라 소바지 않는다 소리나래야 아니 뭐 뭐지 되시죠 무슨 모두 봐야 돼 얘도 뭐 와서 제가 나중에서 모두 보고도 사이에 단지 길을 가와 뭐만들 시도와 제가 소소 매니저 pen 차원의 지원은 아니 매대게 그 루이게 지도는 상황이 봐 아니 되니시하다 봐봐다 차나 추세라서 봐 나가는 루가 길이다 대나라 가라서 봐 대나마도 지니 시르게 벽에도 뭐 차반지 왜 봐더니 니보게 매봐 소원만 사면 지다를 두대야 근데 다저도 그베더니 아니 벽에 들어가네 내가 그래더니 주고거든요 너서 로시아도마 배나 보자주나 카 아니 다자야 무슨 된다기 그 차도에기 장이지로 어디다 드나서 한다면 그래 근데 차비 차거든 너도 여기 저에 대해서 tene modu laso boba jata anda soso nyocha jigo nanda shedan jigo na konda jigo na tana teleya nimbote ana modu paraso to so ko ya so to so mara.
And then the last line of this verse, the verse 28 says, meditate on fallenness and so on. So in this fallenness is stressed, but then there are many meditations encapsulated within this. It is in the so on. It says there are other meditations need to be done at the same time. So here, as we mentioned earlier, that one's practice of single-pointed meditation must derive from listening to the teachings, paying close attention to the teachings with the positive motivations. In order to perfect one's practice of single-pointed meditations, one should dwell in a place where it is free from mundane activities. All these practices, according to Dharma, all these practices are not something that is aimed towards just having a peace of mind. This is not our objective as a practitioner of Dharma. All this practice should be targeted towards one's affective emotions that is within us, within the stem of one's own being. And this affective emotions is the one that enables us to undergo sufferings. It is these affections that enables one to revolve within this unenlightened or cyclic existence uncontrollably. We have no control over it, but we are controlled by our negative thoughts and emotions, such as reflections, self-grasping, and all other delusions or our afflictions are derived from this self-grasping mind. Self-grasping is the one that is root cause of all other negative thoughts and emotions. So, self-grasping, whether we speak of self-grasping or whether we talk about afflictions or delusions, all of this are within our mind. It's a part of our mind. There are 51 mental afflictions, root 51 minds or the mental factors that we find in the text of the mind and mental factor text. But if we go more, there are even more than that. It is not just 51, but there are more mental factor than more than 51, in other words. However, all of this, regardless of the numbers, but all these mental factors belong to the category of this 51 mental factors. They are not out of that, although that you may find more than 51 mental factors, but they are all belongs to the category of this one of the mental factors, 51 mental factors. As we mentioned earlier, all this practice that we are doing should become a remedy for one's own mental afflictions. Identify one's own mental afflictions. Understand, one should have a clear understanding of mental afflictions that are within us. In other words, the three poisoners of mind must be eradicated by means of one's practice. It is for this we need to put in effort. So therefore it says there are primarily 6 root delusions and 20 secondary delusions. And those should be our target. Regardless of what kind of practice we may be doing, if one is not targeting towards one of those mental afflictions, one's practice is not actually becoming a practice of Dharma. So therefore, one should always making to ensure one's practice really become a remedy or the antidote for those mental afflictions. So therefore, for instance, in the text where it says, meditate on the fallenness and so on, and this particular verse is mainly emphasizing on addressing one's attachment. So when you're having this attachment, the attachment is one that, well, by observing that object of attachment and seeing this object of attachment, exaggerating and seeing this objective is more attractive than it is as it will. So this is how the attachment is increasing within us. So therefore, for this, it says in the text, the fallenness, which is also one should meditate on the object, attractiveness of this object. When we look at this attractions and you are attracted by this object, then we naturally generate strong attachment towards us, such as looking at a beautiful house, car, and any kind of object that you think is very attractive, then you get attached to that, and attachment which is increased furthermore. Therefore, if one is a good practitioner and mindful practitioner, one will think about attractiveness of this object and think about actual reality of this object. Will reduce one's attachment towards this. So, for instance, if one has a strong attachment towards someone, the individual, as individual, you have someone, or a man or woman, and meditating on unattractiveness of that person is very important. It's really help us to reduce our attachment towards that. For instance, thinking about, the person to whom you have strong attachment in the form of skeleton, and finally all entire space or the place are filled with skeletons, and think of the actual body that is made out of the substances that are the cause that actually becomes the body of that person, should be understood very carefully. For instance, if you think of the body of that person, analyze very carefully the body of that person, none of the part of this body is attractive at all. The bodies are actually composed of blood, bones, marrows, flesh, and so on. really thinking very carefully, examining very carefully, those are not a very attractive object to whom we generate attachment. Because we are having to attach to those are because of our past habituations. And think about the body, when this person's body is subject to decay, when the person consciousness leaves this past person's body, the body will immediately start smelling and transferring its luster or color of the body, and the people will not even go close to their body. So thinking about all of this, and finally this body will end up, regardless of whose body that may be, maybe a very powerful person, maybe a very precious person, but this body will ultimately end up being in a cemetery ground. So by thinking in this way, one will be able to reduce the attachment towards person.
그것도 좋아요.
Any questions? Whoever has questions, let's take questions. Okay, quiet, please.
When we see the world, we see the world in parts. Things are made up out of pieces, and those pieces are assembled in your mind into an image. So, what is the basis of reality? Is it the parts, or is it the image which has been assembled in one's mind?
Mm-hmm. I'll just ask this question first.这几天看这个吃下边去了，几天看去了吧，几天看可能就차야了个최지 먹고 싶은 분이야 차가 왔어. 최지 먹고 싶은 그几天看是去过，但我就明道那些个几天看去个차的왔어. 다 근데 지금 물리인데 다. 그 간다 그 지금 그 차야 돼. 최지 먹고 좀 되고 차셔 그래. 이내 당은 저 섬내 날이야. 지금 감상도 그 도도 상당 온 거. was. 당은 섬내나리에 되게 그 모인에서도 temporary. 야면은 그 70만 씩 70레레레 삼다는 모인에서 된 거를 간절했어. 그래서 모인에서도 좀 간절했어. 간절했어. 셀주사.
어쩌다 지내지 칸데 차단 거대 나만이가 나는 직송대 그래 되네. 나는 송대 저희네 시켜서 얻어서 이제 라한서 난 거래. 그래서 때나지 나비 쇼널에 이제 통화 차단 차에 가서 내고 요매 타마간에서 동구 요매 이제 찬지 내서게 내서 차단 나비 쇼널에 송송거 요래 되네. 시베기 시사원들은 아니요 말이야. 다만다 치 고유게 거대 시베기 방에서 빅터도 되니 나불로 있나야 나시기 시사원들 남이 좀말이야. 소요 말이야. 근데 진짜 이래다 모두 다 도지된 니도 와서 이제 강사 도도데 근데 제가 대화도서 시사원진 차이 먹어봐 치니 그다음에 진이 무인이 그래서 근데 사람이 나서래 담보도도 제가 내가 시사원진이 차이 먹어 치야 들이야 차라리 제가서 이걸 나중에 차라리 제가서 지도기 제가서 아니 너한테는 지시해서 하는 거 근데 요거 근데 이거는 나는 문제가 요 말해 제가 차라도 선보 참고서 선보는 니들이 강한데 들으니 봐도 이제 다니 쳐다보고 이제 그런 문제들 가려도 다만 지를 지원한테 참여기 다만 서로 세당 지를 라바를 지원한다 그 노동을 거지 모두 지금 나의 책임 르니 받지 뭐지 그 노동을 거지 이제한테 라바가 다나지 제가 다라니 말아서 나이 다나지나 라비 다나데 모두 참이다는 돌에 오서 우리들은 모두 오여말 야나 지도 제가 지셔줘버리 집에서 선보더니 바 자기 몸 받치니 그걸 강히 힘받아 강히 봐 시사고 지니까 전다주로 들려 집에서 집에는 모든 바나에 나와다 니마셔 그래 너도 아직 동안에 산에서 때는 다들려 거다는 집에서 내지 상황에 내지 지요래 야 모두 이제 감도 해야 돼 너들이 되지래 세대 나봐 시사버치니 아니 무슨 치아요 말이로 왔을 때는 너도 아니네 근데 뭐이랬으면 해봐 아니 걸 라바가 다 지고 이거 가기가 때는 무슨 자바들로 와시서 뭐이랬을 봐 늘 참아봐 진짜 주가 지라 근데 요 말고 너가 때는 지리지래서 때는 너도 아니네 때로 진짜로 뭐이랬으면 내가 잘 뭐이랬을 이제 간데 그 도체 도만 되게 공시하대요 와 저는 이제 간데 도체 도만 되게 공부지 이말라 뭐이랬을 이말라 소소로 그다음 전에 tenga mare dodo riji mande yo mare sende noena te noena mare kata chita ko delia deje kam mo jo no cha den ta ji do mire res na ka bo je so so lo ta dang to ni en noena to ka mare to ka je me te je na ko cha de yo
So here, talking about the world. So let's begin with that the teachings of the evolution and the dissolution of world can be found in both teachings of Sutrayana as well as in Tantrayana. However, all those teachings of evolution and dissolution of the world is rooted to the Abhidhamma teachings. However, these teachings of evolution and the dissolution of the world is not as in-depth teachings that we find in the Dharma of our mental system. So far as the teachings of the mental system is concerned, it is given in-depth teachings and very elaborated and in many different ways, of many different style of the teachings that we find in all the teachings of the Dharma, the teaching given by the Buddha himself, such as teachings, interpretive teachings, teachings that are definitive, that is, direct teachings, indirect teachings, and so on and so forth. Whereas the teachings of this world system of dissolution and evolution, although there are very large texts of that, but so if we were to compare the teachings that we find about the mental system in the Buddha's teaching, the teachings of the external environment is not that profound. Would safely say that. So now, answer to the question, the reality of the world. as we all know, the world itself, the world system is not just one single entity. It is not something that is created by or someone, or it is just come about without any combination of any other things, any other factors. But rather the world itself, for instance, let's take about this the world system in our the human world that we talked about. Let's take example of it. It's all the combination of particles, and it is a collection of these particles, and that forms the world, and become the closer and closer. So then finally, this will become livable for all those living beings, including human beings and so forth. But in the beginning, as we all know, which is common, to both science as well as the Dharma, when it began to, form the world, it's all started from this atoms, particles. In the Buddhist text, we talk about the particles of water, wind, particles, fire, and so forth. It is combination of those parts and becoming closer and closer, and finally, the world becomes visible for our ordinary perceptions. And this is one way of looking at the world and thinking of the world. And then another way of looking at the world is world that is actually come to our conceptions, and it's something that is, formed, and something that become livable for all beings on this earth, in other planet Earth. Let's take the world system of this human world system. So we're able to live on that, and that is what we call not going through a critical, process of thinking, just believing in how the world is. And that is, again, if one's understanding of this kind of world is something that is not actually a collection of particles and other factors, then one's understanding of world is completely mistaken. But then if you have the world system that you have in your mind, as you have this in your mind, this world system is actually in a combination of the particles, elements and so on and so forth. This is how become the world, that's something that is visible for us, something that become livable for us. Then there's a realistic way of analyzing the world and understanding the world. But if you think this world again here, world, if you think of the world that is actually exists, is something that is in and of itself, or something that is inherently existent, then that is the wrong view of understanding the world, which is not at all. If you really think very carefully, whether believer or non-believer, the world that we know, the world that we live in, does not actually exist independently. It's dependent on many other factors. So there are different ways of analyzing and understanding the reality of the world. One is the reality of the world is actually coming into being with together of all those coming together of all these particles, elements, and so on and so forth. And one is world that exists but not inherent existence. Any other questions? Andrew, go ahead. Yeah, more.
얘는 왜 내들어도 이제 강성인데 파셔서 셀러나 어느 된들에서 내야 와라 거시를 셀러나 안에 간에 받대 다들이서 가면 내야 되는 동안이지.
But then it is, if you analyze very carefully and try to pinpoint the world itself, and it is unfindable. It is unfindable. If you go through it, which one is the world? Which you think is the reality of the world? Then that is unfindable.
I think we assemble it out of parts. And because it's assembled out of parts, we have a choice of what to assemble it with. And that is because with Dharma, you get rid of the afflictions and therefore choose the parts differently. And our worldview then changes because we're choosing this thing and this thing and this thing in our minds. Like you said with the attractive person, if we only choose the attractions, we assemble it in one way. If we choose all of the other factors as well, then we assemble it in a different way. So I think my idea was that the world is what we assemble out of parts. It's not a thing that has any reality, which I think is what I guess you
So that's true, yeah. Correct. That's so something on something is going to be some called of this. When you switch it, some call 19 match. That could this save the same with the body segment. So some quiet in and be some links in the Panda. You can rest so you did check them that they get the chip called engage chip that book chip 20 was just a game way in this match. That they therefore conduct up for Rajin medicine with the potential match for the best tongue with Najin game made of Jim Tony. Nico, when you should tongue was some lady, some lane at the under Jala Harina. Ko single match for this how could it go more in the city the whole moving into the year with the how we up that was and the day children down to there's some currently near so is in your mother and then yeah Kadija on the John Mason Dalia Kadija age against social capable the delay now is go to serve special.
다음으로 지대지 칸데 이난다. 대지대지 칸데다. 템바데 나레 네비 주지 senje. 저도데 마로도 칸 통바. 레다마도 칸 통바데 근데 주요래네 요스키네 그래. 한 잠블리 코코에 있는 리리 있는다. 세르바가 때나 포셔인데 근데 주요래네 요래서. 근데 아이네 이해라고 저거래. 이해야. 지대 잠블리 지대 칸데 지대 칸데 따사가 되는데 요반데 마다 맞으면 와게 지리는 조조이는 그런 강요받에 근데 지리에 맞다 지데 다시 지나 안에 하게 내려서 되는 지내야 이거를 좀 뒤에서 하는 거지 요반 사소하이나 대모이는 맞아 차를 마다 맞으면 와게 마음대로 가지 강요받에 들어서 요사를 지대는 요사를 저는 지대 답에 그거 말아 아무튼 지대 답에 그거데 그 요사를 나비 쇼는데 매 세가 동바 세대야데 지대는 다 되는 그거를 저도 건지대 좋아하는 게 아이도 유었어. 얘네도 유던데 유던데 매세 대한 거는 데리고 니디서래. 근데 따서 그 되는데 얘는 수도와는 랑자와는 실은 뛰면와 말아서 그 뛰면와 인생으로 서서 답변 누가 주는 명이 답을 남을해서 하는 하고 도도지 가라반 나는 내가 판단한 동안에 미리지 그런 적이 랑자는지 저한테 쉬운 거 같아. 된다와 아는 zaman 나나나게 주요 말했어 그러면도 마다 맞으러 한 거죠. 유대한테 연습을 해. 되면은 제대로 그래. 아니 마음에 최면에서 이제 마다 뭐 여들 봐. 마다 뭐 여서야 돼. 마다 맞으러 하고 여서 그러면 다 이제는 모두 더 산지에 매서 이제
Where the world or the being who was living within the world. Their conventionally existence, the conventionality of this world and beings who are within this world cannot be rejected. If we do not undergo critical analysis of that, without undergoing any critical analysis, the world system, the world that exists. However, if we go through the critical analysis of how that world really exists, when you come to the ultimate understanding of the world, then the world that we think of that exists independently, without depending on any other factors that exist in and of itself, and such a world is non-existence. Similarly, all other things, any objects, for such as vase, pillar, the bottle in front of me, table, and so on and so forth. All of this object, without undergoing critical analysis, the table that exists right there, and it exists conventionally. The conventional existence is there, that you should have this understanding of conventional existence. But then if you go beyond that, undergo critical analysis of how the table exists, which part of the table, which component is the table. If you go through this critical analysis of one by one of this table, then you cannot find the table. So therefore, the great teachers of the past have said that one's way of understanding things should not be contradicting to the conventionality. If again one rejects, because when we go through a critical analysis, the things that become unfindable, and you say, well, I thought the table exists, but it's not existing, then you're actually contradicting to the conventional existence of the table. That actually leads oneself to the extreme of nihilism. So just though the table doesn't exist, when we undergo critical analysis, the table does exist in conventional. And conventional existence of table cannot be rejected. Similarly, the conventional existence of the world, whether the world is in reality, whether the world is cold or round, or whether the world is flat or whatever it may be. And if conventional existence of the world, dependent existence of the world cannot be rejected. Though that world, if you go through the critical analysis of the worlds, each and every part of the worlds, and even down to the atoms, you may not find it. The world does exist in conventional. Any questions? We'll take one question.
I'll hold my question.
Okay.
Is it hotter in India or here?
Which part of India? It depends on the part of India.
Yes.
Some part of India is
Good,
very
good.
cold right now.
Good.
Mongol is hotter. Yeah, I'll answer this question. Having lived in Mongol for 13 years, so I
You lived in England for 13 years?
in Gandhi
Yes.
Monastery.
It's which camp?
Gandhi Monastery.
Oh, it can be.
Yeah.
Oh,
But you didn't know then.
well, then you're.
Oh, but this, compared to those, I mean, whether the heat in India is nothing.
When I was down.
We're spoiled being in the United States for a very long time. So just a little bit, something happens and you know, it's too hot. We're spoiled.
Yes.
We're spoiled by all these resources that we have in this place. So otherwise, just I don't know how I was able to live because I myself was born in very high mountains in eastern part of Bhutan.
Yeah.
And then went all the way to South India and lived there for a very long time. And it was just, I don't know how I survived. But yeah, I would think it
Yes,
okay.
yes, it's.
Is it true that Nungamuks, they said, when it's really hot, the number of showers they can take a day per hot, when it's really hot, do they take showers?
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Yeah, we try to do 3-4 times a shower.
Like a really hot day. it's like a
That's
4
true.
shower
That's
day.
true. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not heated water.
No,
No, it's just water.
the water is it's almost like lukewarm. Water is lukewarm, so it's not cold at all.
Yeah.
So.
But it is refreshing.
Yeah,
I feel lucky then.
absolutely, yeah. Well,
Should we say the dedication prayers?
Okay.
It's on page 23 and 24. We can continue the auspicious wishes on page 28. Ndagi jine sate gewaye.
Tenaro agula gambet, cheva jesu lozando mai, tembe nipo rendo sajiru.
Saji Boki.
Choshe meto na rera leje nide nyamade, sanje jibo mende gowaye, rogo nata jena jevarayo.
Kewa Kutu.
Yada lama na dame juji pela mujuji, sana lamje yune rodo, doje jange korwani dojo. Janamana lakani yata yami,
On page 28. Jeswai
kwasera tenji naga tene joju jivana, rosa timbe drume sasunji, roge meseta dune juruji. Oye jangazi, bela dewa manu duene, jere zewan teze jasoye, jabe sede wado tenjuji. Cheta chebana, guntu zibo te yandijinde, tega gunji jisu danuchi, yewa deda tamje roto. Sono chebe jowa tamje, nowa kano chodo mabade, ragi give sarwa dibunje, sambo juje roto wani. Shmaza mapane, yin mative mada, tara para gizkele. Gana mapane, mala mapane.